All right, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Redfish 2022.1 release webinar. My name is Jeff Otter from Hewlett Packard Enterprise. I also co-chair the Redfish Forum within the DMTF, along with my cohort Mike Ranieri from Dell. Mike, say hi.
Hi guys, as Jeff said, I'm Mike from Dell, and I'm the other co-chair of the Redfish Forum.
All right, with that, we will dive right into the content today. So to note, please note that this webinar is being recorded. The recording will be available to the public and posted onto the DMTF YouTube channel, and the link is there as shown. But you can search for DMTF Redfish on YouTube, and that'll get it there if it's not obvious. So before we dive into the new release, let's start with a quick polling question just to see who's out there today. And we'll give folks just a couple seconds to answer that. It's an easy, simple poll question. All right, let's take a look at the poll results there just to see who we've got on the call today. Oh, I see. So we've got 100% of the folks on the call are all implementing Redfish on their products or devices. So that's fantastic. So this release bit will be a very of keen interest then, because we have a lot of incremental value that's being added to the schemas this time. So let's get right into it. So the contents of release 2022.1, this was made public a few weeks ago in the middle of May, and obviously available for download. We'll have all the links and all that here later in the deck if you're unfamiliar with how to retrieve all that material. But let's look at the summary here. This, as I kind of said in the lead in here, this release, there was a lot of updated schemas. The rest of it was some minor pieces and just a little bit of clarification on the spec. So we'll go through that list here. So the specification itself was just an errata release. There was a conflicting statement in our event subscription clause that was preventing folks from doing filtering based on registry prefixes and message IDs. So, and as we'll get into some of the additions into the event subscription pieces, you'll see why we suddenly realized that statement was in conflict. So that one's been resolved. Everything else, the schema bundle DSP 8010, it contains all the updated schemas that are part of this release. There was also updates to our message registry bundle. So a revision of the base message registry that added some additional messages around invalid requests. And there were also some errata around argument descriptions in several of the registries. So that bundle is also available. And so in the schema bundle, there were a total of 34 updated schemas. So all those are minor additions, and we'll go through that list. So no new schemas in this portion, but a lot of incremental work, showing a lot of folks getting into implementations in various types of devices, and that's kind of what drove a lot of this work. And I said, all the material available for download, and if you need one URI to remember, it's dmtf.org/standards/redfish. That's the standards page, and that has all of the materials available there. All right, so we don't usually go through these documents, but did want to point out that we have a new guide document that is now going to be part of our normal release process for each Redfish release. While we've had the schema guide and the supplement have been available for many years now, we've just created a new tool. And Mike, thank you for helping with that one. That we've created a new guide document that provides a similar, human readable version of the message registries. And so you'll see here the one listed here at DSP 2065. That document is now a guide version, human readable of every every message registry that is published by the DMTF, and it provides both a table summary form, so you have kind of a quick reference for looking up, and finding messages, and then a breakout version of those individual messages, so you can see all of the parameters and how to implement or how to decode them. So hopefully that as we are publishing more and more message registries, hopefully that having them in a form that you don't have to look at the JSON is a much more compact and human friendly way to look at those. So all right, so with that, we'll get into the minor revisions. So we're not going to read every single one of these, but just kind of want to point out some of the highlights. So in account service, there were some pieces added for around LDAP configuration, especially around the use of SSH keys. You'll see that is in a few places here in the schemas, pieces specifically for handling some SSH support. In battery, these are links to memory and storage controllers. So for battery implementations that are used for backing up either a memory device or a storage controller, like a RAID, battery backed cache that has an external battery, those links now provide a way to show those the correlation or the connection between a battery and a particular device. In certificate, this was an addition to deal with specifically with LDAP, where the information about a certificate comes from the LDAP server and is not provided through the Redfish interface, or at least not created that way. And what we found were there were cases, in LDAP, and I think actually also in Active Directory, where in common use there are multiple common names and multiple organizational units that show up in those certificates, but those were not necessarily supported by the original certificate definition. So in order to maintain compatibility, we added a couple properties shown here, the additional common names and additional organizational units, as a way to surface those without without causing an incompatibility or an interoperability issue with the single versions of those properties. So common name and organizational unit are still valid, and those will contain the first one found in the certificate. And then just to deal with the ability to grab that entire certificate path as something that gets passed along to other pieces of software, we've also added a property called display string, which just takes the entire that entire chain and allows you to display that to the user on both the subject and the issuer objects. In chassis, so this is the other area that got quite a bit of attention this release. There were links added for other pieces that could be contained within a chassis, and as we surveyed the data model, we wanted to make sure that there was a proper linkage between what we'd like to call the functional parts of the model versus the physical parts of the model. So the chassis being the primary part of the physical data model, wanted to ensure that you can link to those logical or functional portions. And so having things like fabric adapter was one, as we went through, that had not been previously included. As part of the physical model, a piece that had been available, or that was part of the original Redfish 1.0 schema releases back 6 years ago now. There were two properties called powered by and cooled by, but these were open-ended links that could point to really any resource, and it was never clear to anyone how we would get any interoperability off of that, since since that was what could be the other end of that pointer could be anything. Are you pointing to another chassis? Are you pointing to a device, a fan, or what? And so that's been on our list of things, was to come up with a better answer for that. So with the with the additions in the last few releases of the thermal subsystem and the power subsystem models that better describe all those physical infrastructure components, we now have some answers for that. So the other additions here in chassis, and you'll see these details really in the schema as well. There are a couple new properties. So two of them, these powered by parent and thermal managed by parent, are ways to show that a particular chassis is, does it contain its own power and cooling infrastructure, or is it relying on some larger component, or a larger chassis that it's contained within to handle those things. So the best example here is a blade chassis where an individual server blade may have its own fans and may have its own power units, but it's more likely that it's just that it's relying on the shared infrastructure of a larger enclosure to provide all that information, or to provide all that that support. And so in this case, we wanted to provide a deterministic way for clients to determine those things. That's kind of a roundabout way of saying it. While you can find the fan and power supply details in that chassis, power subsystem and thermal subsystem, the absence of those things, could mean that they were just not implemented, or they were not present. So these new Boolean properties powered by parent and thermal managed by parent are a way to say explicitly that yes, I'm relying on the larger chassis that I'm contained within to provide my power and my cooling. And then lastly, on that area, there's a thermal direction, and that's basically just to show what direction is the airflow through your chassis. It's just a way to further help folks doing physical modeling. And like I said, as part of this was also providing some links. In this case, these are exceptions, not the rules. Power supplies and fans. That if there are connections directly between a power supply and a chassis that's not going through the normal chassis containment model, meaning this chassis contains a bunch of power supplies and a bunch of server blades, that's all fine. But if it's a one-to-one mapping of hey, I've got a power supply that maps to this blade, and number one, number two, number three, down the list, where you need to show those individual linkages, then we've got these new properties that can allow you to show those links. So like I said, that should be an exception, for infrastructures that truly aren't shared, but effectively contain a bunch of individual units. So hopefully those are exceptions, but we wanted to make sure that we had that support in there. And then, like I said, we deprecated several of the other pieces that are now have been replaced by, in the sense of media controller, that schema had previously been deprecated. So we've now removed that from, sorry, not removed, deprecated it, the link from chassis in favor of the fabric adapter. All right, moving on. So most of these are going to be much less interesting. Additional voltage types, some additional capability pieces. Nothing to go into detail there. A version number that was part of SPDM that was added to component integrity. In computer system, there was a property added called manufacturing mode. This is really there for vendors and for end users to see where they've gotten a device that has most likely mistakenly been placed into a mode that was under diagnostics, or under what a lot of folks would either call factory mode or manufacturing mode. But this is used as a way to indicate that that the device is in that state, and that really for the purposes of manufacturing diagnostics, you can see that this is that the system is in that mode. But as we know, mistakes happen, and sometimes those things escape out into the world. So being able to detect that condition is an easy one now with this Boolean property. So hopefully folks don't see that happen, but we have at least the ability to surface it now. So it can be it can be detected. In boot progress, there's a lot of stateful information in there in terms of as you move through the boot process, moving from from stage to stage. But as a point of measurement, as a way to see to track performance or maybe to detect issues on large fleets, we added the last boot time in seconds. Or sorry, I added that in there. The last boot time seconds property just shows how long did it take to complete the last boot cycle. In Drive, sanitation type and overwrite passes, these are more details in the secure erase, as it was a it was under you didn't have the ability to specify a different type of erase, but now knowing that there are multiple variants of those, so sanitation type now allows you to choose one of those. And if if you're using overwrite, then there's an overwrite passes there that can say how many passes of that type of sanitation are you going to take. In endpoint, this was a clarification. We had local ports was added, and that deprecates the previous link that didn't differentiate between effectively the local port and the remote port or connected port. So we had connected port, but it wasn't clear how those got used. And so the decision was made, we'll deprecate the generic version of that and then provide now connected ports and local ports to show, to explicitly show these are two separate lists. Okay, and then moving on, I said external account providers, more SSH pieces there, same as manager account. So event destination, this is where where we caught the conflict in the description and the spec and cleared that up. And the additions we made here are in two pieces. Number one was adding these two new properties called exclude registry prefixes and exclude message IDs. We wanted to provide an easy button. How does a client easily subscribe to most messages without saying I want everything, because as we know, some services can get chatty. They can also be producing a lot of details that may not be of interest to a human client or a client that's doing specific tasks. And so subscribing to everything is generally probably not what folks want to do. But how do you subscribe to everything but a few of the things like the resource events, which is the source of a lot of change notifications. But there was no easy way to do that where that would not require the clients to keep up with all of the new message registries that get added over the years, or even ones that it never knows about, such as an OEM defined registry. So the answer now is that you can do a subscription and say, I would like to get everything except these registry prefixes. So the best example here would be I subscribe to all registries except for resource event, and so that will effectively get you what should be things that a human would consider an event or an alert, but not get the generic resource change, resource added, removed, things that may either be duplicative or more likely useful for database updates, as opposed to sending somebody a pager message to get them to get out of bed. So the other piece that was added was, as we sort of went through these scenarios of how do subscriptions work, and so there was some cleanup here, and by cleanup I mean filling in some holes. So there was the ability to restart a subscription, but there was no ability to pause one. So we added the suspend subscription action so that you can, if you're going through some kind of event storm or through some significant event, you can pause receipt of further events until you get that cleared up or finish your debug purposes. And then there was also upon the resuming a subscription, we added a parameter to allow the service to allow the client to specify to the service how much of any buffered events did you want to get. So the example that we had was for a remote service, some device that that had lost its internet connectivity for for a day, something out on the edge. With that, once that gets once that's restored and the client comes in to resume the subscription, it can say, I'd like to see anything that happened in the last couple hours, but I don't need to get 4 days worth of fault detection notices. So so that parameter allows you to at least minimize how much traffic is generated. All right, so moving on, the event service, same parts there that exclude prefixes, pieces was added. That's part of the event service to show that you support those types of subscriptions. And then moving on, in fabric adapters, some additional fabric type. Sorry, fabric type is actually new, so that's there as a typical piece in most Redfish resources to just allow software or clients to determine what kind of thing are you looking at here. So that was added. And then obviously memory domains was something that's as we get to more complex adapters, that's just another piece in the model. And then on fan, and you'll see this in power supplies, these are the other end of those specific links between a fan and a chassis, where the normal chassis containment model isn't sufficient to show a relationship. So if I have a specific fan that's cooling a specific chassis and not everything, then there's a way to provide that. You'll see the same one here in a minute for power supply. And then lastly, before I'm going to hand the second half here to Mike, in job, and you'll see this in task as well, but we added an estimated duration. So this is a way for the service to give an indication to a client rather than trying to give the time to complete. This is giving that estimated duration. So 0 to 100%, useful for hopefully useful for providing information to clients to put up on their GUI. All right, and I'm going to hand it over to Mike to do the second half of this. Take it away,
Thanks,
Mike.
Jeff. All right, so to go along with the other SSH key support that was added, so the key resource itself was extended to support SSH style keys. There was also an additional user description property added that can be used for any type of key where the key itself is not well described, self-describing. So this allows a user to put in something that might be more useful from their perspective, saying, "Oh, this is my public key for accessing web server 37." So any sort of user string at that point. Log entry was extended to show additional relationships between other resources in the service. So maybe in addition to origin of condition, there might be other resources of interest. So you could follow a related item to find other things that a client might need to inspect when looking at an event. And likewise, there might be other log entries that are related to this particular entry. It could be that this is the starting point for a set of events that are all closely related. So there might be other events that need to be processed. Within manager, service identification was added as a user writable property. So that way, today in service root, you have UUID to uniquely identify the service. But in a lot of environments, that's not necessarily very friendly for the infrastructure's cataloging types of software. So having a way so a user can put in any sort of identification that's that suits their needs. So maybe they have a particular string formats that they need to identify services with, and this allows the user to bubble up their own type of identification within service root. So you attach that to the manager, and the manager would present that in their Redfish service root. Additional versions was also added. So if there are embedded components that need to be reported outward, so perhaps you might have some internal libraries, some bootloader version, the OS version, that may not necessarily be the same as the firmware version for the manager, but it might be useful to have that type of information in case you need to kind of do a second order inspection of what might be installed on the manager. Manager account, we added keys, and this goes back to the traditional SSH type of use case. So that way, if a user is connecting with SSH to the manager, and it provides a key as opposed to username and password, the service can look up that key and find the matching manager account to authenticate the user. Within Manifest, there was a new type of stanza added for composition requests. This register resource block was added so that if you're if you have a fabric manager that you have a lot of disaggregated equipment, you have various servers that you need to track. Maybe you want to allow for users to compose new systems out of an existing server. And so this allows a user to notify a manager that, this server that already exists, I want that to be able to be used in composition requests in the future. Within memory, like what Jeff said with batteries, we added links to show the different relationships on how a battery might be powering devices. And so this is the back pointer so that a memory a resource can show, by the way, I'm a battery-backed memory device, and here's a link to the battery that supplies power to me. Next slide. There we go. So in memory metrics, we added a couple new types of metrics. Indeterminate, correctable and uncorrectable error counts were added, and this is used when you have memory metrics to report the metrics for an entire memory subsystem. And so you might not be able to identify a particular memory instance where the error applies. And so this allows you to register that an error did happen in the subsystem, but it may not be reflected on an individual memory resource. Within metric definition, adding an additional context property. So in the event where as we start building more and more metric definitions over time, some of them may not be, they may not equate to something that's physical and that you can go out and associate with a location in a system. It might be related to things like performance or capacity of devices. So showing something like storage for a physical context, you can have many types of metrics associated with storage. And so logical context allows you to distinguish the different types of metrics within that physical domain. Port metrics was updated to include PCIe error capabilities. Power supply was also updated to show which chassis resources are being powered by that power supply. And that's useful when you have large systems with nested containers, and you might not, it may not be so obvious as to say, well, I found this power supply in this one chassis. Is that actually powering that chassis? Yes or no? So if you have kind of that large layer cake of systems, this lets you more directly associate who is powering what. Processor, we also added additional firmware versions, just like with Manager. Likewise, there may be individual components with a firmware image that you need to report outward. Maybe it's microcode related information. Processor metrics, a few new types of errors to metrics to report core error counts. So if you have internal core processor errors, this is a place that can go. On service routes, we added the service identification property. So this is the place where that patchable property manager now can appear as a read-only property. So when you're scanning your data center, you find a service route, you can find that user-writable, user-written identification to look that up in your cataloging software. There's also multiple HTTP requests added to protocol features. This was to help let clients know that certain types of web servers may or may not allow for multiple outstanding HTTP requests. Some are serial, some are not. So this is a way to kind of give a client a bit of a little bit of information to say, how many requests can I make before waiting for a response? Session, we added created time so that way an administrator could see how long the session's been open for. Software inventory also has additional versions to show any sort of breakdown of components within a given image. Storage, we finally took the step to deprecate the array of controllers in favor of the individual resources for storage controllers. And so that was a learning exercise that we had over time where, we started off with just saying, let's show controllers as part of storage itself. Then we quickly learned that in some environments, you may have lots of storage controllers that come and go, in particular with NVMe-OF. And so having resources for that makes a lot more sense from a modeling perspective. Storage controller, just like with memory, showing your back pointer to your individual batteries that back that storage controller, and task showing in kind of an informative estimated duration for how long the task may take. All right, we've got some polling questions that should go out there, and then I don't see any questions open up, but feel free to ask any questions.
No, and Shannon, I'll go ahead and open that other polling question for us here. So a little late, but in the flow here, but just would like to know this as we move into our roundtable. And I guess I should mention that. So as soon as we're completed here, we'll move over to the link that'll be popped up here in the chat in just a moment, and we will go have a live roundtable discussion. So anyone that would like to have an open-ended chat about either this content or anything in Redfish in general is welcome and encouraged to come over well. So let's take a look at the poll results here just to see have been here before. So we'll take a look. Oh yeah, so actually about half of the folks are saying they're just getting started. So and others have been working on this for a while. So so nice mix of folks. So always good to see. All right, so so with that, just before we move out to the roundtable webinar portion, just want to give you the summary here. So as I said back at the beginning, the page to find all of the downloads of the material that was mentioned today is at the DMTF's standards /standards/redfish page. The other one to remember is and from here you can actually get to all of our materials, both things from the DMTF and all of the pieces on GitHub, and that's from the Redfish developer portal, so redfish.dmtf.org, and that will take you between that, the YouTube pages, the GitHub links, everything. So getting more involved, we do have the public user forum, where you can post questions. So it's our message board, and that's at redfishforum.com. If you have pieces that you'd like to submit to the forum for inclusion in the standard, then all that kind of material is submitted through what's called the feedback portal on the DMTF website. And lastly, if you're either a DMTF member but not involved in the Redfish Forum currently, or would like more information about joining the DMTF, come on in. The water's fine. And that's all available at the standards page as well. So, and so we do have a couple pieces in the a couple chat messages here. So, so please do fill out your. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Shannon. We've got one more survey, or excuse me, one more poll question. Let's go ahead and launch that, and then I'll just, and as I close out here, there is a survey that and Shannon, I'm trying to remember where that survey is coming, or I think you get it from a link. But please do fill out your survey so we know how we're doing, and obviously we're here to provide this information for you. So we want to make sure that what we're doing is helpful. So, the last of the poll questions, you can click through that. We'll give you just a couple more seconds, but we do continue working on open source tools to help the ecosystem, both on the conformance and test side, and on the and trying to seed the ecosystem with things like our tackle box tools to give folks a way to get started and and actually use the information that's provided by the interface. So Shannon, let's take a look at that last poll answer. Yeah, and so as expected, yeah, a lot of folks are using our tools for validation, which we absolutely encourage, because those tools have been rung out on oh, I don't know, dozens of implementations now. So so when they show something's wrong, well, there's something that you've got to deal with in your conformance. So and I see that we've got a couple folks also looking at our client libraries and the scripts. So that's great. So and one and someone that didn't know they were available. So good, we've done our job today. You now know that there are open source pieces available. So all right, so with that, that takes us to the end of our webinar today, and you'll get I believe you'll get a link here to show. There it is in the chat to show that how to join the different Zoom meeting that allows us to actually talk one-on-one with you. So encourage everyone to do that. And if there are no other questions in our chat window, so so we will end this portion of the call, and thank you all for attending, and we will see you in the roundtable.
Thanks, everyone.